Samir, good to see you. Hey, Samir, let's start with that. So, not a huge jolt in oil prices, but I think it's important to remind people around the world how we can't underestimate the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, right? Countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar need that strait to ship their stuff out, don't they?
Well, that's right, Aaron. You're right that the jolt doesn't look that huge. It's only when the news broke that Iran had carried out those ballistic missiles attacks on the U.S. bases. We saw immediate reaction when crude and WTI, the two main benchmarks, going up sharply. But what has happened is I think analysts and markets have realized that the damage was limited, which is why these prices have recovered. Coming to your question about how important Strait of Hormuz is, it's very, very important. Because as you mentioned, 20% of total oil passes through this passage. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, they all use this. And some of the biggest customers in the world of oil, like China, South Korea, India, the biggest consumers of oil, receive this oil through this passage, and that's why it becomes very important. Now, what's happened in the past is that Iran has, on more than one occasion, targeted oil vessels that were passing through this water body, and they've also threatened in the past that they would block this route whenever tensions have escalated between them and the United States.
Samir,
analysts are still worried, Aaron.
Sorry, does does Iran does it have the capability of blocking that strait, do you think?
Realistically speaking, Aaron, that's going to be very difficult, because to do that, they'll have to deploy almost virtually their entire armed forces to really block that. But what they could do is, which they've done in the past, is target oil vessels and create that panic. Now, we've already seen that, for example, Britain has already announced that its navy would be protecting the vessels that would be passing. But nevertheless, they always have this option of attacking those vessels going through. The other option, Aaron, which analysts are talking about, is what we saw in September when Saudi Aramco, the Saudi oil company, its oil facilities were attacked. Now, Iran has denied that it had any role in it, but that's also an option for Iran. Iraq and Saudi Arabia are the two biggest oil producers among the OPEC nations. So if Iran chooses that option of attacking any of those oil facilities, that could also make oil markets nervous.
Yeah,
however, at this stage, Iran is saying that's going to only target U.S. U.S. Army bases.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, let me ask you about these passenger planes rerouting, sort of deciding not to fly now over Iraq and Iran. I'm wondering, does this come off the back of the Federal Aviation Authorities, the U.S. regulator who basically banned American carriers from flying over those countries?
Yeah, it was initiated from there because, all the airlines and regulators, aviation regulators around the world follow what FFA advises. But also, given that ballistic missiles were shot this morning, all these airlines, Singapore Airlines, Malaysian Airlines, Air France, you also have Indian carriers that have decided not to fly over Iraq, Iran, and some of the airspace in the Persian Gulf. Some flights have been cancelled. For example, here in the UAE, Emirates has cancelled its flight to Baghdad, so has also Fly Dubai. So they all are just being cautious.
Indeed, cautious. Samir, always a pleasure.